There's a stain you'll have to explain later. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Unreal Talk. I'm Brian. That's Dave.
And this is a double quarter pounder with bacon and Big Mac sauce.
You know, it's not like we're being sponsored by anyone or anything.
Yeah.
You know.
It's not like we have any corporate deals going.
Yeah. I drink this tasty Rockstar Super Sour energy drink just 'cause.
And I happen to really enjoy the smooth taste of Coke and lime that comes in every can of Cuba Lima.
It's awfully tasty. So what are we talking about today?
Well, I was reading books. I like books.
Books. How the fuck do those work?
Well, they're not like those video games you have now that are all the beep, 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 beep. No. It's just paper. Fucking Big Mac sauce is getting everywhere.
Tell you, that's what happens when you eat Big Macs on the fucking camera.
Yeah, well, at least it didn't get on the fucking camera.
There's a stain you'll have to explain later.
Well,
not. I forgot who I'm talking to.
I was like, there's this thing. Oh, never mind. People just stop asking me questions after a while.
Exactly. As you know, one thing I heard from one of my favorite YouTube channels, besides this one, of course, subscribe down below, is this guy on this gaming channel is like talking about, you know, it takes him at least an hour before bed to get ready.
Yeah.
So, you know.
That's Sinistar, man. He's a crack up.
Funny dude. Other guy, he's kind of okay too. Crooked, I guess, is his name. I don't know. Something like that.
And there's that woman that was occasionally on there, Snap. That was a woman.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And then there's the other one, the Fiona chick. Yeah, the chick who's a Pokemon and a cosplayer. Oh, yeah, books, because that's what I've been doing at work in my spare time. I was reading, or I was drawing and coloring, and I did some paper crafts, and then I was like, I should start reading again. So, I picked up that book that came in the Loot Crate, Ready Player One. It's actually a good book. You should totally check that out. It really is like the Willy Wonka of the Matrix. Because the entire world is a dystopia of dystopenness. And this guy who created what started off as an MMO online role-playing thing. It's you put on virtual reality goggles and gloves, and you become a character. So it's like everything we've ever wanted in video games now, but it happens in the future. Well, mostly in the future. It's like 40 years from now.
Have you ever seen Wild Thing? The comic?
Yeah, I remember that.
It's kind of like that. It was like something like 30 or 40 years after all of the Marvel heroes have died or something, and the world's just kind of like it is now, except everybody's like, you know, addicted to
Online gaming.
In this virtual
But in
world.
this world, it's not illegal. It's actually encouraged. People go to school online. I mean, imagine how cool high school would have been if you were just like sitting at home wearing the fucking goggles and shit.
Have an avatar where you look like Garou from Mortal Kombat just sitting in the seat. But that's okay, because sitting next to you is Voltron. In a very big seat. Like to scale.
Yeah, the guy who created the game dies. And he starts a contest in the game. Whoever finds the 3 keys and completes the challenges in the 3 gates gets the company, all of his money, and essentially control over the virtual universe.
And it's by Ernest Cline.
Yep. It's actually a terribly entertaining book. It's entirely filled with 80s movie quotes and song references and just like...
So it's like something you or I would have come up with then, basically.
Yeah.
Because, Tony, you know, my favorite books have always been horror, personally. I can't really think of anything more recently. You know, one thing that kind of really kills your book reading for the most part is having a family. I didn't say having a family is bad, but I mean, as far as like how your time is divided up, well, yeah.
It's not like you got aunts and uncles coming over like, hey, stop reading that book and hang out with me.
Yeah, that's true, although I know families that do. Like crap like that.
Like, stop reading that fucking book and come out and party. I'm like, shut up, ants.
Yeah. And fucking little ants. But yeah, my favorite books have always been the works of Stephen King. And Richard Bachman, who was also Stephen King.
Who was also Richard Bachman.
Boom, knowledge in your head meets.
Yeah. Because for that, like, 5 people that didn't know already, totally.
Exactly. They actually re-released all of his books as Richard Bachman, is Stephen King writing as Richard Bachman. I know, it's totally pointless.
It must be hard being Stephen King. Apparently he gets bored.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I want to re-release all of my books, but under my other pen name, but have it say that he wrote it under my name.
Yeah. Now he's, like, doing, like, kind of like what Disney did with the whole, you know, like, where they ran out of ideas, so they basically just kind of went back and started doing sequels to all of their shit.
Yeah, that is kind of sad.
Because, damn, I can't remember what it's called. I'll put it up here, the title. It's the sequel to The Shining. And...
The Glowing.
Anyway, Danny Torrance is now grown up, and apparently he is being pursued by the organization. You know, the guys that were pursuing the chick from Firestarter. Because, you know, that's, I guess what they do is they hunt people with...
Special powers?
Yeah, basically they hunt the X-Men. More or less. I mean, if you think about it, okay, people that can start fires, people that can make heads explode... What's that movie?
Communicate with their future selves.
Yeah. Which, you know, that was Scanners, the head explode thing. It wasn't actually a Stephen King thing. But, if I recall, it's been a couple years since I've actually gone ahead and read Firestarter. I'm pretty sure that, like, different people could do different things. Like that.
There's Dead Zone.
Yeah, there's the Dead Zone. But if you look back, if you didn't know already, I mean, if you're a Stephen King fan, you already know this. But if not, all of his books are connected. Or at least over the years, he's connected them.
Yeah, he's written himself into a corner and then went back to the beginning of the room and was like, I meant to do that!
Yeah. Up to the beginning of the universe, which actually began with It. With the turtle, you know, and, you know, the enemy was the spider. And
are we talking about the never-ending story now?
No, there's not Atreyu, which is an awesome band, by the way.
And then there's Falkor.
Yeah. Motherfucking Falkor.
Wasn't he the one who did Amadeus? But yeah, I like horror. Stephen King's pretty good. I like biographies, too. I like reading about people. I've read Drew Barrymore, Violent J, Bruce Campbell's done a couple of them.
Oh, yeah. Never read any of Bruce Campbell's. He did like 2 or 3 of them. I know 2 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I read
I've got 2.
Yeah, I read the. Was it Joe Brown? Who was that guy? He was like an ex-football player.
Don't remember at all.
I don't know. I read that in school, and that was like the raunchiest thing ever, and I didn't realize it at first. And I had to do a book report. I remember on it, talking about threesomes and like stuff like that.
Because he's a major sports celebrity.
Yeah. I read the Marilyn Manson's autobiography.
I remember back when I was still in elementary school, I read Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
And that was entertaining.
Yeah, that still holds up today. I remember reading that. I remember reading Jurassic Park and then getting excited a couple years later when they announced they were making a movie out of it. And then getting upset after I watched the movie. I mean, the movie was good.
It just wasn't the book.
Yeah, I mean, some of my favorite parts, like the river rafting stuff.
You know, if Stephen King was going to write an autobiography, that's what they should pretty much call it. Like, it was good, but it wasn't the book. Because that's like every movie ever.
Even when he went back and directed himself, like the remake of The Shining, I think he directed. Well,
there's Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah, he didn't like that, by the way. Even the one he did, there were two versions of it. Do you remember what the name of the other one was?
I thought it was just Maximum Overdrive, and he directed it.
There was Maximum Overdrive, but the reason why he directed it was because it's actually a remake of another movie that came out. I don't know, Kill Cars or something.
Killdozer?
No. But
Christine?
No. But yeah, there was actually a movie that came out, and he hated the fuck out of it. Like the first one.
The Goonies.
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure Stephen King hated the Goonies.
Yeah. Little did anybody know that the Goonies was actually Maximum Overdrive, but the director decided that moving cars were bullshit that were alive.
See, the thing is, you have to look at it from a certain perspective. If you take the crime family in the Goonies and replace them with cars and trucks, it all makes sense. But yeah, you know what I really liked? You know what I actually, one of the things that I find amusing is the novelization of movies. I mean, they aren't necessarily canon in the sense of, like, movie continuity, but some of them actually work out a lot better than the movie themselves. Like, I read the novelization of Mortal Kombat, and you remember that guy, Art Lean, who dies in 5 seconds? He actually had, like, a whole half chapter about himself in there. You know, his wants and his dreams before he was arbitrarily smashed into oblivion by Goro. There was also a couple more fights in there with some otherworldly creatures that didn't make it onto the movie because apparently budget for special effects wasn't so good.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the downfalls of practical effects, is that they're a lot more expensive and you have to be a lot more creative with some of them.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff online that says on both sides of the fence, you know, like, the practical guys will tell you the computer stuff's more expensive, and the computer guys will tell you the practical stuff's more expensive. I think it's just a industry-wide delusion, but that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is, there was actually a bit more substance to the story. It was like, in the X-Men 3 book, I got the novel of that.
I think I read that for some reason.
Yeah, I think I had it when we had the apartment together, so I just found it on the shelf.
Yeah, but that's where the alternate storyline where Rogue decides not to get the cure.
Yeah, that happens in there, and they go into a little more depth as to exactly what the fuck Jean Grey was doing. She wasn't just killing people, she was hyper-accelerating their powers until they basically blew up. Like, she fucking stretched Professor X's powers so far that he just fucking vaporized.
Yeah.
And, you know, Cyclops, she turned his powers up to 11 and just let him blow up from the inside out. The only reason it didn't work on Wolverine is because she just turned his healing factor all the way up and he just kept walking through the debris while it was tearing chunks out of him.
Yeah. Which also kind of doesn't make sense.
Telekinetics, shit flying around, people dying, whatever.
Yeah.
And like, Gremlins. It's like the novelization of the movie Gremlins actually explains where they come from.
Oh, yeah. They're actually aliens.
Yeah, they were the creation of an alien scientist who was trying to make a perfect being to help enlighten and educate people. But something went wrong because when he started trying to reproduce them, everyone after that, like 9,999 out of 10,000, went completely evil and crazy. So he kind of had to scrap the thing, but somehow one or two of them got out, and one of them wound up on Earth.
And then
Gizmo.
Yep, can figure out the evil gene there.
Yeah. Apparently there is a 1 in 10,000 chance that any one of the little puffballs that comes out of Gizmo will be just as peaceful and nice as he is. But that hasn't happened in the movie yet, so yeah. And none of this was ever actually mentioned in the movie. They just kind of write it off as, well, here's this thing. Does it really matter where it comes from? Not particularly. I mean, you know, it doesn't really change the fact that you keep it out of water, don't feed it after midnight, and don't let it get exposed to sunlight. Yeah, that's pretty much all you need to know about Gremlins.
Yeah.
It's right up there with the Ninja Turtles' origin. It's just like ooze, turtles, sewer, ninja. Poof.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, which wasn't in the graphic novel.
Apparently, the novelization of Cabin in the Woods has a bit more explanatory information in it about some of the monsters that were in the various cubes. Wouldn't mind getting my hands on that.
That's interesting. You know, actually, the producers of Cabin in the Woods is getting sued right now because some dude claimed that they stole his idea. Because he wrote a book, right, that's apparently very similar to Cabin in the Woods, and he decided to distribute it himself. So he basically went out on Hollywood Boulevard with a stand with books that he copied himself and sold for like $10 a book. And supposedly a couple studios had contacted him to ask for rights to be able to use it. And
I guess he said no.
This studio, yeah, and he's always said no, and then the studio had not contacted him, and he just saw it one day. Now, there's, a great chance that he's a crackpot, because a lot of these are just, unfounded claims for a lot of these kind of lawsuits.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that's so hard to understand about, like, copying a book. I mean, I hate to say that every story's been told, but there is a certain point where, every story is kind of more or less the same. It's just the characters and the set pieces that change.
Yeah.
I actually went back and read The Hobbit recently. Man, that shit drags.
Yeah.
That book is ponderous. I mean, like...
It's amazingly short. Well, it's short compared to a lot of the other works of Tolkien.
Yeah, but it feels like twice as long. And it's just like, oh my god, really?
It feels as long as the movies.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, like, I finished Ready Player One in a night, and that's like 400 or so pages. I finished the first book of the Dresden Files series in a night, and that's like 400 pages. The Lord of the Rings, the fucking Hobbit. I read the Hobbit, and it takes me days, because every couple of pages I'm like, still haven't gotten anywhere yet. I read a couple more pages, they're still hanging out with the fucking bear guy.
I don't know. I do like certain touches, though, that were in Lord of the Rings, at least the movie. I don't recall if this was actually in the book, where, they're going through the woods and they run into the stone giants, or the trolls. Remember, they were like...
I think that was in the book, yeah.
Because they were going to eat them in the Hobbit, and then, like, they were so busy
arguing... Which took a chapter all by itself. Jesus, fuck.
They're so busy arguing, the sun came up and turned them to stone.
Yeah, because Gandalf was fucking with them.
Because apparently, they're... like fucking gargoyles from like the Disney show.
Except they never turn back into trolls at the end of the day. Yeah, let's see. There's actually been a lot of novels that I've read that were based in like D&D worlds. Those are kind of nice. Gives you more insight into the world and some of the characters, and actually provided some inspiration for some of the stuff I've done.
And that actually kind of goes into, starts a different kind of novel, the fan fiction novels. The people that write their own things.
And fan fiction is shit.
Yeah,
it's a worthless waste of time.
I don't know. I mean, if it's a hobby is one thing. If you're trying to make money off of it,
Worthless waste of time.
I mean, what's really the difference?
If you're really such a good writer, write your own shit. Don't go fucking around with other people's characters. Make your own. Yeah, but that's the difference between the remakes and the fan fiction. The fan fiction is just some ass clown grabbing the franchise by the back of its head and forcing their dick down its throat. I mean, at least with remakes, there's a little romancing. Maybe dinner and a movie first.
Yeah.
And then the horrible rape.
And unless it's most of the Stephen King adaptions that have ever come out, that's just... They don't even lube you up first.
Yeah. Just sad. We're going to remake The Shining. Well, that made-for-TV one wasn't too terrible.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed that one. I also enjoyed Rose Red, which was actually, he wrote the screenplay before he wrote any kind of book for it.
Which is rare for him.
It really was.
Oh, no, actually, speaking of odd choices in changing Stephen King stories, what about The Mist?
I like The Mist.
I mean, the ending could have been better.
Yeah, I won't spoil the ending. I don't know about
technically, okay, we'll tell you if you want to know what happens in The Mist. Pause the video, go watch it, and then come back. But technically, spoiler etiquette says that once a movie comes out, after 2 weeks, fuck your spoilers, because if you really wanted to see it that bad, you would have already saw it. But anyway, you cover the book first, and then I'll fill in the gaps with the Punisher.
All right. Well, I'll just go over the whole synopsis, because honestly, the book and the movie are very close up until the end.
Yeah, and also, the actual story is pretty fucking short. I mean, it's one of the short stories in the Skeleton Crew book.
Yeah, which I really enjoyed that one. I also enjoyed The Jaunt, which was in there as well. Which The Jaunt, they're making a movie of, actually, now I discovered. I just started pre-production on that.
So Stephen King gonna be alright.
That's right.
Probably doesn't even own one kookaroo. He gonna be alright.
Yeah. So anyway, basically what happened is that there's this big storm, and the town's cleaning up or what have you, but coming in from the bay is this fog that seemed out of place. Well, as the fog starts enveloping the city, the small town, as it were, in Maine, where all of the stories...
every small town in Maine. Even, I've been to Bangor, Maine, and it's still a small town.
Yeah.
I mean, they call it a city, but it's a small town. Don't get me wrong, I love Maine. Especially in the summer, out in the woods, stripping down and get... Anyway, what were you saying about the monsters?
Yes, exactly. There are monsters in the fog. All kinds of monsters of different shapes and sizes.
Big ones, small ones, insects, spiders.
Yeah, ones that ride on bikes, even monsters with chicken pox.
Yeah, and they all love hot dogs.
Exactly.
Human hot dogs. Because they're eating people.
Exactly. So anyway, these people are held up in a store, and Stephen King is very adamantly anti-religion. If you've ever read anything that he's done,
or seen any of the movies,
yeah, I mean you can get that vibe in pretty much almost every movie.
Every religious person in every Stephen King movie is a total screaming douchebag.
Yeah, exactly. So it was an interesting study on human nature. Even they're held up in the store, and people kind of start going off into factions after being there a couple of days, mostly because of fear.
Yeah, there's the religious group and the crazy gun nut group.
Yeah.
And the people that are just like, what the fuck are we supposed to do?
Yeah, and the religious group, there's this crazy, the crazy people that you have in your town that, stand outside and start yelling, pray to Jesus.
The crazy religious person that's in every Stephen King movie.
Yeah.
This one just finally got some kind of power.
Yeah, this one actually, everybody was just so panicked and, thought it was the end of times or whatever that they actually bought into her shit. And so she became basically a cult leader for some of these people. And then they decided that they wanted to start going ahead and, throwing people that didn't believe out to feed the monsters so that the monsters would stay away from them as blood sacrifices. Because she thought that's what God wanted. She was old school with that shit.
But yeah, basically long story short, they want to escape. They're not sure if they can. Shit gets real at the supermarket. They fuck off.
Yeah. Eventually, everybody in the supermarket dies in the book. In the movie, actually, they
don't really clarify.
Yeah, they just kind of leave them there. I think the door might be busted or something when they leave. But anyway, at the end of the book, they're just driving, and they have the radio on, and they get a little signal that they think sounds like it might be hope. And as they're driving, they see this giant thing that's maybe a 7-story building, walking by in front of them. Mm-hmm. And they just see it walk off in the distance, and that's the end of the book. And that's where the movie varies.
Well, yeah, in the movie, they see the thing, and they kind of actually stop. They're right at their feet, and it walks over them, and they're like, holy shit! And then they drive on a bit more, and then the car runs out of gas. And they're still in the middle of the fog. And they've got a gun. And they've only got so many bullets, as I recall. So they're like, okay, we got to do this, because otherwise there's no getting out of this. Because the only thing I remember differently from the book is that at the end of the book, it's revealed that he's actually writing the whole story down at a restaurant. And he's like, we're headed this way. Maybe there's someone there, and then they go fucking drive off. You never get the writing shit down in the movie. All you get is they stop the car, and then heartfelt moment, dude kills his son and the 2 other people that are in the car with the last remaining bullets. And just as he's like, I guess I'll go out there and, maybe try to, get killed by the monsters or something, the military rolls up with flamethrowers and starts burning everything, and the fog starts parting.
Yeah.
So literally, if he had waited, weighed the options for 2 more minutes, it would have been like, whoa, put the gun away, the military's here, and they're taking people away.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where the movie ends.
Yep. Which I actually like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a ray of hope, but a very dark ray of hope.
Yeah, well, I just love the irony behind it, because...
It's like, there's hope for the world, but he's just destroyed everything he cares about, so who cares about the world?
Yeah. You know what he deserves? Punishment.
The monsters deserve punishment. Because it's kind of hinted at throughout the movie that this had something to do with a military experiment at some base. I don't remember if that was in the book or not. Or
it was, and when they're kind of trying to figure out what was going on, they don't know if it was everywhere, or just their town,
or if it's spreading.
Like, and apparently the monsters that were in the mist are apparently somewhere in the Dark Tower as well, from what I understand.
Never got into the Dark Tower.
That's the dimension that they're from.
Because, I mean, like, I've heard about the Dark Tower, and people have said you should read the Dark Tower, but then I'm like, that's a whole fuck of a lot of books to read.
Yeah. I read 3 of the books, the first 3 things, and it's interesting. I mean, it's basically what intertwines the Stephen King universe together. Because,
so it'd kind of be like the plot convenience backdoors that I used to write into everything that I used to write.
Yeah, kinda. It's like, he's, like, when he opens up a hole, because, like, the bad guy, as I remember, don't crucify me here if I'm not really remembering it correctly.
Crucify him.
Yeah. But the best I can remember it is that the bad guy was actually from the normal Stephen King dimension, you know, like our dimension, or what he would consider our dimension.
Where Stephen King is an author.
And found a, found a way into that world, and he's kind of like almost like a sorcerer of types. I didn't really get that far when he actually met the guy. But he was making things really hard for the people of that world. And the gunslinger was able to find a way to kind of get through to our world occasionally. And when he did, it was like different time frames. And he ended up pulling in some kid that ended up dying in one of the other books that was like an integral part of the plot for something else. I remember that happened. I don't think he fucked up time, because I think everything that happened still happened as far as, like, you know, what had to happen for the book to take place. But that kid ended up becoming, like, his sidekick. Anyway, I remember they tried to stay away from the ocean just because of the monsters that, you know, would pop up.
Yeah, I would assume in that universe with the 7-story monsters that just wander around, the oceans would not be a place you'd want to frolic.
Yeah. But yeah, the monsters, that's one thing I do remember, though, is that somewhere along the line it ties together that the monsters from the mist are from a part of that world that I don't think people really go into.
And apparently they just let it bleed through into that other world. Maybe they stopped it, maybe they didn't. There's not really a sequel or anything, so we can't say unless it winds up as a subplot in the Dark Tower book at some point. But yeah, the Dresden books. I mean, I definitely think that it's something you'd enjoy if you gave it a shot. It's kind of along the same lines of the horror, mystery, fantasy, except instead of, you know, some guy who can't do anything about it, you've got a wizard who can most of the time do something about it. He's not Gandalf in the first couple of books, but by the time you catch up to book 15 where it's at now, yeah, he's Gandalf in it.
Hey, they used to call me the White Wizard.
And now it's like, fuck it. Because he's a real t-shirt and jeans kind of guy. You know, t-shirt, jeans, duster.
Yeah, as you always see on the covers of the books, the duster, and kind of like a
But he never wears the fucking hat in the books.
Huh.
For some reason, the cover artists just seem to have a problem with faces and hair. Because they just put the fucking hat on him all the time, and there's no goddamn hat in the books. But yeah, those books are pretty badass. The audiobooks are nice. I want to get the audiobook of Ready Player One, because it was narrated by Will Wheaton. And that sounds like it could be fun.
Yeah.
The only Dresden book I didn't like as an audiobook was Ghost Story, because it was John Glover instead of James Marsters, and he didn't get the voices quite right.
I would think that's kind of creepy when a guy does like a chick's voice. It's almost like mockingly.
Well, you know, some of them do it mockingly. You know, when James Marsters does it, he just kind of softens his tone a little bit. You can definitely tell he's doing a different voice, but it's not like, I'm being a woman.
Yeah.
It's definitely just him being a little softer. Yeah, I got all those audiobooks. You should totally check those out. I mean, if you're not doing anything else besides editing and watching movies, you could actually listen to an audiobook.
Yeah, I mean, I could listen to one while I work out. You know, it's like an hour and a half a day I could be listening to.
It's true. But the audiobook of the last Dresden book was 16 hours. Because that was a big fucking book.
Yeah.
Because I'm not even going to say anything. Because, I want to say stuff. Because I know people out there have read it. And I know you haven't read it, but if I start saying shit, then you're going to be like, well, that ruins that. Because there's a lot of spoilers to be had, and, I think I've clipped all the important shit out, but, if you read it, you'll be like, damn, this dude's got a fucked up situation.
On that note...
Polka will never die.
Exactly. And perhaps Dave can, do a random or something, just blurting out everything he wants to talk about as far as the Dresden Files goes.
Everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a long thing.
Yeah. So until then, thanks for watching another episode of Unreal Talk. Join the conversation down below. Don't leave spoilers for the Dresden Files.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah. But join the conversation down below. Let us know your favorite books, favorite authors, all that shit.
I know my dad started reading them, but I don't know how far he is, so I didn't want to say anything about that either.
Okay, if you're his dad, leave a comment down below and tell him how far you are.
Yeah. And we'll know if you watched or not, because you will not have left a comment.
Exactly, like last time.
And also, if you get a chance, you should check out our friend Sinistar on Kill Steal Gaming.
Yep. And that other guy,
Yeah, Crooked, the guy with the stuff at that place.
Exactly.
And that chick that's still there, who's pretty cool.
Yeah, but definitely...
Jigglypuff or whatever.
Yeah, but definitely nobody named Snap, so you don't have to worry about...
Yeah.
running anybody named Snap. Oh, Snap.
We got nowhere left to go on that one. Yeah, well, I thought, just in concept, that a battle between Hardware and Iron Man would be a good idea.